Hi, Susan.
Hello, Earl. I wasn't sure if anybody was here.
I'm. How are you?
I'm well, thank you. How are you?
I'm doing well, thank you.
Yes, 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 you are without video, right?
Yes, I am without video.
Uh, Yes, I remember that from yesterday. Yes. But you're all well then, going along all right?
Yeah, I can't complain.
Yeah,
Things are
likewise.
good. How's everything at Lakewald?
Lakewald's fine. We are still going ahead with Mayfest. That's the second weekend of May, and we sell time tickets into the garden. So we have a nice lineup of activities that you can do safely. So we're
Well, that's good to hear.
yeah, just forging along.
Nice. Hey, Sally.
Hi.
Hello, Sally.
Hello, Suzanne.
Yes, yes. Nice job yesterday, I thought.
Oh, I thought the artists were so well prepared and
Yes.
They
it
were.
was really nice. And sorry about the, sticking to the script, Earl. I was told to do that like out of fairness,
Yeah, yeah.
but I
It's a
agree that since they're answering them in the
yeah.
presentation that we can be much more organic.
Yes, they're
And since
very
we have
professional. Mm-hmm.
so I think, yeah, if we feel like they answer the question that we have, we don't need to re-ask it. The time goes by so quickly. In hindsight, I would have given them more time.
Really, it's okay. It's okay. And yeah, and they do answer the questions well. And if they fill up the time and we can only squeeze in a couple of questions, I think that's just fine.
Okay, okay, great. So I would say, just it's kind of first come, first serve. Whoever has a question that they think is very, very pertinent, um, they can ask it.
Yes. Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
and I
Sounds great.
thought, Daryl, these are all recorded because it's on YouTube. Hi, Laura.
Hi.
Um, And so you can go back up for the ones you missed, Daryl, and you can watch those. And
Okay.
our artist is on, but you can also, take notes and then put down kind of your vote
Yeah,
later.
I've been doing screen captures. That helps me.
Oh, okay. And I have all
Mhm.
the artists have sent me all of their pictures that they sent in as well. So
Okay. How's everyone today?
Hey, Daryl.
great.
Hey, Earl. I'm trying to figure out what would be a pertinent background here. I've been playing around with stuff.
So I'm glad to see Laura's here
Hi, and
Yeah.
Tom.
and
Hi,
Tom.
Laura. Hi,
And
Tom.
Rich, who was at the site
Rich,
visit.
hi. Yeah,
Yeah.
everybody was
Hello.
here. We were so impressed with the art projects you've done in the past, and excited, a little surprised, but very excited you were interested in this project.
Well, thanks. I mean, thanks for reaching out. Yeah,
Mhm.
looks like a fantastic project. So,
Yeah.
Yeah.
We're waiting for two more people. Oh, there's Jason. Jason, we have the artist on, Laura and Tom. And sorry, what was your name?
Rich. Rich, yeah.
So we find that, yes, the time goes by very quickly.
Mm-hmm.
We will get started right away, and then as more people come in, we just have one other person, and she's driving, but we'll listen in. We'll get started, and we'll let you have the floor.
Okay. Let's see if I can do the.
And while you do that, I'll just tell you who's on our committee. We have Susan Warner, we have Daryl Owens, Earl Borgert, Council Member and Deputy Mayor Jason Whalen, and Council Member Patty Bell. And we have a youth representative, Ariani Esperon, and she's on the city's youth council.
Oh, cool.
Awesome.
Well, we have found the youth in Lakewood have very definitive ideas about what they'd like to see in our projects. And so we wanted to have them represented.
Fantastic. All right, well, I'll go ahead and jump in and get started here with our presentation. Can everybody see our screen okay?
Mhm.
Okay, great. I'm Tom Drugan, and this is Laura Haddad, and this is Rich, who was able to come out to the site visit. And sorry we couldn't make it. We were actually out of town. Our daughter is off to college next year, so she had a visit at college, so we had to be there for that. But Laura and I have been collaborating, doing almost exclusively public art for about 20 years or so. As you can see from this kind of overall image, we have a big diversity of work. So we're very site specific. So we kind of draw inspiration from either the culture of the place or the site phenomena, the environmental factors, could be really anything. So you can see just a whole different variety of forms that we use. I think one thing that unites our work is that we're always looking for art that is both unique to a place and a site that's based on that inspiration, but then also is activated over time. So, and it often changes. So we use a lot of lighting at night to kind of extend the concept of the artwork. But then during the day, we look at using sun and sometimes wind to activate the artwork. So it's always a little bit different every day and kind of responsive to its environment and to its culture. So I'm going to quickly run through, Laura and I are going to run through some projects. We're just going to do kind of a quick overview, and we're starting with some of our more recent work, some of our bigger work, and then we have a few kind of smaller projects later that we'll touch upon, and then we'll get into questions and answers.
So we wanted to start with the cloud at Angle Lake, since it is in South County, and you guys are probably familiar with this project. So this is the light rail station, and previously there really wasn't a whole lot there. So the art, I guess there was nothing very iconic there. So the art really created a place at the station. It's a beacon, it's a gateway, and there are some incredible views once you get up onto the platform of Mount Rainier and Puget Sound. So the art concept was really kind of about drawing your attention to the environment and up into the sky, and to just capture people's imagination and make them want to get up onto the platform. So this cloud sculpture is made up of over 6,000 acrylic discs that kind of scintillate in the wind and glow in sunlight. And like Tom was saying, it changes its appearance depending on the time of day, whether it's front lit or backlit. And then once you're up on the platform, you stop seeing the cloud, and it's more of this immersive experience. So we're often trying to create artwork that is iconic from a distance, but then when you're close up, you see the textures and just light qualities and kind of an abstraction. And then at night, we have some LED lighting. So I'm gonna turn it over to Tom now.
So sometimes the artwork can be more figurative and iconic, such as this giant dog. This is a very popular artwork in Denver. It was built as part of a new animal shelter. So the interstate runs right across the front here, as does the South Platte River. So we picked up some inspiration from the river, kind of that effect of the light playing off of the river, and that was the initial inspiration. And then we were able to kind of capture that kind of changing quality of light on the surface of the giant dog named Sunspot, and play with that using, was it like 90,000 stainless steel pet tags? So, wow.
Yeah, it's a little bit similar to the cloud, you know, this icon from a distance and the texture and light up close.
Yeah, so here's a more detailed view. One thing, this is actually on like some roadside attraction books and sites, and so people come here and they get their photo taken with the dog as they pass by. At night, we used a palette, kind of the sunset colors. This is in Colorado, so they have these great sunsets, and we use the palette of colors so the colors change over the course of the evening. This one is also in Denver. We just finished this last year, and this is out on the way to the airport there. And they have a light rail station with a plaza. And so they wanted this icon but they're doing this whole development called the Next City, which is kind of a sort of high-tech, environmentally sustainable community that they're building. And so this is kind of almost like a kickoff to the community. So we saw some similarities in that idea here that you've created a plaza and then new development is coming in around it. It's made up of, there's like 1,000 acrylic rods that each have an individual LED illumination source. So we kind of run all kinds of interesting color changes through it. During the day, it's almost like a dandelion. It's very light and ethereal. And then at night, it goes through all these different changes of colors. And we have a whole different sort of a score of changing color effects and video effects depending on the time of the year, different holidays or commemorated and festivals and things like that. Another kind of iconic piece that was built as part of a plaza. This was a new waterfront park and plaza that they built in Nashville. And so here we picked up on this great meander of the river that runs through Nashville and used that as kind of the sculptural form to kind of mark the place. And they also wanted this view from downtown, which is just a couple blocks up the hill, where most of the people are. They wanted it as kind of an attractor, sculpture that would catch your eye and bring you down to the river. So it kind of had a similar goal of the idea that you have an artwork that kind of creates the catalyst of a changing place. On the river side, it's all mere stainless steel, so you get these fun kind of reflective effects with the changing sky, people. And then on the city side, it has this illumination effect that kind of wraps down and changes materials, and then down at the bottom is actually a gathering place, this Ipe bench that kind of swoops down for gathering. Close-up view. A couple close-up views looking at it. Oh, one interesting thing about the lighting effects on this one is we really picked up on the palette of the changing color of the river. It's always changing depending on the season and the runoff, and then of course sunsets and sunrises in the water and night lights. So here you can see it's always kind of flowing. The light work always flows up these rods. And again, a whole nother composition tied to different seasons, different nights of the week, different celebrations.
That's cool.
And so this is a project we did down in Phoenix, and this one doesn't have any illumination on it, but we thought it was interesting in that some of these projects are kind of larger budgets, but the individual components of them are not that costly in and of themselves. So this was interesting site on the very kind of west edge of Phoenix, and it's near the one of the rivers there, and so there's a lot of bird activity, and it's also near Luke Air Force Base. So we're really interested in these kind of swirling wind currents and kind of pick that up in a sculptural way, and then use these colored discs that actually move in the wind. And there's birds and some of the jets at the top that are near stainless that catch light in different ways. So, and there's just a close-up of an individual one, and these colored discs, similar to what we use on the Cloud and Angle Lake station, really amazingly effective in the changing light. Another one that was kind of a plaza. This was interesting. It's up in Edmonton at the Valley Zoo. It was an entryway to the zoo, but I won't go too much into the details of it, but it kind of has these reflective surfaces that kind of pick up on the environment around it. But it's a grove of these stock sculptures, but you actually can go into them and you can move them and shake them and kind of interact with them. So we thought this was kind of an interesting approach, that the artwork isn't just something that you're looking at, but something you can actually be in and interact with physically.
Yeah, and I think that last one is another one that can be scaled to the budgets. This project here is called the Cloud Chamber, and this was a pretty low budget project. I think At the time, it was maybe about $50,000. So this is at a park in Northgate, and it is a kind of an entry feature called the Cloud Chamber, based on these scientific devices where particles of water were electrified and moving around in a chamber. So here the cloud is depicted with the curving pipes, and then the straight jutting out pipes are representing rain and particles colliding. So they have these lights at the end, and the lights are actually on day and night. And so it kind of just creates this simple portal into the park, but is also visible from the street as you drive by. And this kind of gives a sense of the scale. I think it's about 8-foot diameter, but set up high, it's very visible from a distance. And then this last image is a project we're working on currently at the Climate Pledge Arena, where we're the lead artists and worked on an art plan and worked with the arena to commission a bunch of local artists. But we're doing this project called the Access Lounge. And this is a piece where each of the elements is representing a color or an emotion from the Jimi Hendrix song, Bold as Love. So, so each one of these pieces is kind of an artwork in itself, but together they create this kind of interactive composition with a performance space and, you know, a lot of texture and color and light. So this will be installed in the fall. And then did you want to?
Yeah, so Sally called earlier and said we could just kind of, you know, go over some of the, anticipating some of the questions you had sent, and we could do that now, or we could, if you like. However you can do it.
Yes.
Yes, please.
Okay, great. So just, I think from, so I wasn't, or we weren't able to be down for the official site visit, but we went down on our own when we could. And I think we were struck, and then also getting the feedback from Rich, who shared some of the same ideas that we think is just an incredible opportunity to kind of see how this space is going to be developing over time. And so it's really kind of capturing what is going to be, I think, the sort of heart of Lakewood. So I know with COVID, it hasn't been, you know, activated by events much lately, but I think that's going to pick up soon. And then with the new development coming in, I think it's just going to become more and more active over time. So a couple of things we're struck with. We love, of course, the Gary Oak Grove there, and we felt that was almost like a sacred space in and of itself. So I don't think we were drawn to like doing something in there per se, but kind of loved it for what it was, and it kind of makes a sort of a natural gateway in and of itself. To sort of see that anchored by, you know, on the corner, if that could be developed with a, you know, cafe, restaurant, pub, brew pub, something like that will really activate the space. And of course, the new development is going to change the character and the amount of people there all the time. And of course, you know, I'm sure everyone's struck by the elegant theater and love to see that restored and reopened. I think that'll activate this entire area.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I think the art can play a great part in that. And we were talking earlier, almost like thinking of the art as sort of a catalyst to this. In some ways, it'll come in early, and it'll ideally be this kind of vision or icon of the space that you'll identify. Like when you think of the space, you'll think of the art too, because it'll kind of give it a signifier. And then that over time, as the place grows, I think that could really become embedded in the character of the site, if that makes sense. Mm-hmm. So a couple opportunities that we thought of, and I'm not sure how novel these are, but the idea of a gateway would be very interesting to explore. Mm-hmm. The one over on the very far right at the top of the screen there would be visible from the road. And of course, if we're, you know, selected to move on and do an actual proposal, we'll dive into more about like, you know, how things are viewed from the different streets and really study visibility of that. The other option is to kind of span the road over here a little closer to the where it kind of goes to the raised paver platform area. So it's more embedded in the site, but also that same idea of more of a gateway type of art feature. One idea we tossed around is the gateway, that we could create this great artwork, but it also could serve as a place for future artworks to come and go. Maybe temporary artworks could be kind of part of this sort of gateway art feature. Not quite sure how that would play out now, but we like that idea that it could be kind of refreshed with something changing, as well as it's got kind of a baseline artwork to it too. And then of course, just given the strong formality and elegance of that facade, that something iconic that kind of was sort of centered and symmetrical would be very, very powerful kind of anchor to that space as well. And then I'm not sure this would be part of this artwork, but we just looked at that facade and saw how cool it would be to do just an illuminated artwork on that facade, kind of work with the different spaces and geometries of that. I think could be really powerful. And maybe that's a future phase or something, or we could start if there was kind of lighting that went with the iconic sculpture. So that was just some of our initial thoughts. Is there any other? Share. Yeah, we could run through these. So here's that grove. So we really love. And I think one thing I know is when Laura showed the picture of the Axis Lounge at the new arena, we're lighting a large tree there, and this could be really dramatic too, just to take these trees and add some uplights to them. Could be a really powerful kind of natural gateway into the site and along the road. So here's that first site where we could see potentially spanning or, working on this side or the other side of the street to have something that kind of feels like it's a pass-through kind of experience in and out of the space.
Yeah,
that really marks it.
This feels like a bit more vehicular as an opportunity. So, I think it would be helpful to talk to you all about, I guess, what are the priorities? Is it to draw attention to people driving past, or to create a feature once you've entered into the space?
Yeah, and so there's the facade where we could see different types of lighting, and plaza space. So here you can obviously imagine the iconic
The icon
piece.
in the middle. So when you talked to Tom about, you said a symmetrical piece, I think what I was imagining, and maybe you meant this, is something that is symmetrical within the symmetry that's on the facade, but the sculpture itself might not be symmetrical
Right,
within
right,
itself.
yeah.
Um,
Thanks for that clarification. Yeah, and then the other opportunity for a gateway piece that's more embedded and deeper into the overall space is here, kind of spanning between the two planters here, sort of that interesting transitional space. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah,
Is that it?
I think that's I think that's so that's kind of the an overview of us, an introduction to us and our current work, and just highlighting a few of the projects that seem to have overlap with some of the goals and some of the spatial configurations that you guys are thinking of. I think I'll just look through some of the questions here.
And can we also open it up to questions at this?
Okay, that'd be great.
And just an excellent job addressing everything that we're looking for from you. So I'm going to open it up to the committee for questions based on the presentation.
Sure.
Thank you, Sally. I had a question for both of the artists. I'm kind of intrigued by what you did with the new climate change arena, formerly known as the Key Arena, and before that, the Seattle Center Coliseum, for those of us who remember way back when. What were some of the challenges of that project and the scope?
I mean, honestly, it's been like a project of a lifetime because it's just so much history. And I think one of the challenges was, but an opportunity at the same time, is it's a landmark structure. So we had to be pretty conscious about, not doing any artwork that would touch the historic structure or or even compete with it. So the art plan doesn't have any large scale iconic sculptures similar to some of the projects that we showed you. There's no like 40 or 50 foot tall sculpture. It's more interactive artworks and artworks that are embedded in the surfaces. I think, I don't know if they're, I guess that, I would say the challenge, it has been that we're working on this gigantic team and the art is like the low man on the totem pole. And it's hard to sometimes get attention on these issues that are, plaguing the artists and really holding them up. But it's like for the contractor, that's not till August. So they don't really want to answer our questions quite yet. But really other than that, it's really exciting, I think.
Yeah, and so we did the art plan. How many? Is that
We
2
started
years ago?
like 2 or 3 years ago with the art
Yeah,
plan.
and so then we helped kind of identify the places for other artists to work and kind of have been working closely with them on their artwork. And so the idea is that all the different artworks kind of work holistically together to kind of tap into the different aspects of the history and the legacy, and then also the future of the arena. So that's a really cool thing. And
another project we're doing there is we're lighting up one of the historic trusses on the North Plaza. So it's just architectural lighting. So it's not actually physically touching the structure. And then there are some kind of greeter sculptures. Actually, one of them is being created by Preston Singletary. And then some Nori Sato is doing a mosaic. Ioli Alessandrini is doing a lighting project. And then we have a comic artist doing plaques along a railing that tell stories about the arena. So we created opportunities for a wide variety of artists and approaches, but everyone's from Seattle and there's a lot of diversity in the artists represented. So I think it's pretty exciting.
So Laura, thank you very much. I had one more question and I'll let someone else weigh in. In lieu of what you just said about the historical nature of the Seattle Center, dating back to, of course, the World's Fair, do you see some similarities here with the historical nature of originally this was the vision of an area icon of what could be done here in the prairie? Do you see that as kind of an inherent challenge, or are there big differences to the project? And I'll mute after this.
I think there's
I guess there are some similar. We hadn't really thought about it, but I think there are. I mean, especially if there's people gathering for events, and theater obviously would have some similarities. It's a historic facade.
I think what's really cool, just thinking out loud about this, the parallel of like when a place has a certain connection to a community and a legacy over time. I think there's all these sort of stories people have over the years as they experienced it through these different changes. And I think that's what we're trying to tap into somewhat in the at the arena. And I think that would be an exciting opportunity here to learn more about, how this kind of served the community and how the community connected to it, not just in its past, in its earlier heyday. And then, but then to me, what's really exciting is how this is gonna be sort of the new space for people in the future, and how it kind of really becomes the center of the community or the heart of the community. So I think that's, like, to me, the most exciting thing is that I know Lakewood isn't that old of a city per se, but I think this is like a great step in kind of creating that new kind of civic identity and community identity. So.
Okay, just a heads up, we have 4 minutes left. I have a couple of questions. Jason, you probably have questions.
Sure. Well, I have lots of questions. I'm just fascinated by the use of materials. I especially love the Nashville piece because it was so iconic. I've seen it actually. My daughter went to school down there, and
awesome.
the bend in the river and the lights. I'm a big fan of those kinds of things that utilize light. I noticed a lot of your pieces use light. We would love light, I think, as an option. How durable are the pieces you've created, both materials and the infrastructure for the lighting? Because that's one of our requirements, is something that's really durable and iconic.
Yeah, I think we've learned over the past 20 years to make sure everything is incredibly maintenance free and
Yeah.
as durable as possible. We use, high grade stainless steel, 316 marine grade stainless steel when we can, sometimes 304 if there's not, conditions. The wood, like in Nashville, is Ipe, that'll last forever.
Yeah.
I mean, I think the lighting that the LED nodes that are embedded in the sculpture are a little more complicated, and they can be harder to access for maintenance, especially when it's something that's way up high. But I think for this project, I don't think we would go down that road. We probably couldn't afford to do, a 40 or 50 foot tall sculpture with all the LEDs. So, but I think there are, there's, like at the Climate Pledge Arena, we're using Grace fixtures that are inside the stage, and they're very accessible and they're programmable. So there are some ways to have that kind of internal lighting where it's not like actually in the sculptural components and very complex. And those really are super durable.
Yeah, we use some LED lighting, like thinking like SeaTac Airport, like what was that? And they're still
going.
Yeah, they're still going fine. So I think the longevity of these things is incredible. And we're using the highest end products you can get just to make sure. I mean, it's always more costly to use something cheap and then have to come and replace it than it is just to get the best you can do.
Okay. Did you have another question, Jason, before I ask?
Well, I just want to throw in, I like the concepts you've created here. Looking at this picture, that's not a bad spot to think about. But we're really looking at something that's both engaging from the street, but interactive for the pedestrian, right? So that's a little bit of the challenge, and that's why it needs some height and light. Not huge height, but some height. Yeah.
And that kind of leads into my question again. I'm just going to ask it. We have 1 minute, but quickly.
Sure, you got some time.
I think as a committee, we're saying, do we want a gateway or do we want something interactive, or can we have both? As an outsider, as artists coming in, do you have an immediate opinion about that?
I would say something that could be both. I think that would be the fun challenge here, is to create something that feels like a gateway, but is also an icon for the space. I think that's kind of like, from our general discussions so far, I think that's kind of where we'd
I think I would say I would lean towards icon, because I feel like we could do more with the budget with an icon rather than having something sort of dispersed. But I mean, but it could be both. But I guess
Well,
if I had
it
to
doesn't
pick
have to
one
be
or the other,
dispersed.
I think the iconic
like
presence will be more memorable.
Yeah.
That's really helpful. And I love that space that you chose with the planter boxes. I think, if you do it right, then it can be both, because you're not out by the road trying to touch something.
Yeah, that's tricky. Well,
Thank you.
Maybe if you select us to do a proposal, you could give us some feedback on what we presented. So we're kind of taking your thoughts into consideration.
Absolutely. So the follow-up to this is, if you have any questions for us, to go ahead and write them out. And I'd like to ask you to write a follow-up question, and that is addressing unity and diversity, which we spoke about a lot for this project that I didn't really hear come up. And I know you put a lot of thought into those types of things, working with the community. And so if you could just send me a little follow-up that I can share with the committee about how you'd bring in, or would you try to bring that in?
Yes, definitely. That was one of the things we didn't have time to get to, but yeah, that was something we talked about, how to kind of bring that connection to the community together and be interactive and work on those themes of unity.
Great. Do you want to just, type something and we'll share it? And I'm sorry it's so short. We're learning from our experience here. But thank you. Thank you so much.
All right. Thanks, everyone.
All right.
Thank you, guys.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Take care.
Okay, Cameron, do we have Peter on?
Yep, I just promoted Peter to a panelist, so should be connecting. There we go.
Welcome, Peter.
Hi, I'm sorry to butt in on that.
Oh, you're fine.
You know what? It's fine. These are all recorded, so anyone can access anything anyway. So nothing confidential, and your timing's perfect. We're just learning that the time goes by very fast.
Yes, indeed, it does.
So we're so happy to have you here. We absolutely love your artwork, and we're excited to let you give a presentation now.
Great, thanks. Thanks for having me, and thanks for considering my work for this project. I guess what I should do just right off the bat is go ahead and share my screen with you so that I can show you a few images of some of my previous work and talk a little bit about my background in public art. So, are you seeing a giant crow there?
Yeah.
Okay. So there are a number of things that I try to accomplish with my work, but the main one is to create something that's interactive and really draws people in. And I think this Lakewood project is right down my alley in terms of that kind of approach. But there are a number of different ways that I approach it. And one is to create these large iconic structures that are just impossible to ignore, that sometimes become kind of selfie magnets, but they're in every case, they're pretty recognizable, but they're pretty quirky too. They're different sort of approach to familiar objects. I've also done a number of fire station projects, and this one is in Roswell, Georgia. You've seen some of these slides in my earlier work that you've reviewed, but we'll just go through these quickly. And this one in particular is one of those things that sits out in front of a fire station and announces the building and sort of has a narrative. It's called Bucket Brigade, and it sort of describes the motion of taking a bucket, passing it from one person to the next and throwing it on a fire. And as you can see, it's got light in it, which is something you've asked to consider. And it's also very interactive. Now these buckets are fixed in place, they don't move, but of course, kids' imagination makes it look as if they actually can be spilled on each other. I also try to make work that has a specific reference to the site where it's located, be that the history or the culture or the population of people who are using that site for whatever purpose. And this is on the campus of the Pierce County Skills Center in Puyallup, which is an adjunct to the Bethel School District that gives kids vocational training in a variety of different areas. So the hammer is meant to represent the most basic of tools, and by extension, all the different tools that are required to learn a new skill, which is what they do. Also, you can see that there's these are meant to be nails. They serve as benches, and you can see that one of them is bent over. And the message there is that failure is a part of learning any new skill. But the other part of this that I think is important to my work is that it has a bit of a sense of humor. And I think all these things do in a certain way. They're not one-liner jokes, but I want people to be entertained by my work. I take my work very seriously, but I think it's fun too, and I want people to enjoy it. So you can see this again becomes sort of an interactive gathering place in the center of the campus, and it encourages people to get together. Another aspect of my work is these really sort of iconic site markers. This is a project down in Rainier Beach in South Seattle, and it represents the king and queen of a chess set. And it was inspired by Detective Cookie, who's a Seattle police detective who's really active in the neighborhood and has taught kids how to play chess as a way to occupy their time after school, but also to teach them strategy and life skills and the importance of good decision making. So this really functions as a marker for this location, and it again has lighting in it. So at night it has a different appearance than it has during the day, and it really becomes kind of a beacon for this location. There's a lot of been a lot of really positive feedback to this project, and in fact, there is a plan afoot to create a permanent chess park on this property, with the sculptures being sort of an anchor for that.
Great.
And in another instance here, this is the Carnation Library, King County Library in Carnation. And the sculpture is this oversized side table with a giant lamp on it, which functions as a beacon for the library entrance. And again, the light is a component of the piece. I sort of think of light as a material, and I use it in a lot of these projects. They're not lighting art per se, but the light is a component of the artwork or a material that I use. So this is fabricated entirely out of bronze,
Wow.
which is very durable outdoors, very easy to maintain, impervious to solvents. So even if there's graffiti paint on the surface, then it can be cleaned off without damaging the metal itself, and the finish can be infinitely restored. So these are some things that I take into consideration when I do public projects, and for the Lakewood project, I would probably consider bronze, or in the case of the King and Queen sculptures, they're made out of stainless steel. So those are both materials that are really durable. Now this goes back quite a ways. This is a very early piece, 1985, but I wanted to show it because one of the thoughts I have, and we'll talk more about my approach to this project, but one of the thoughts I have is to create a gathering place. And I liked, somebody made the comment that the word unity is embedded in the word community. And I like that idea, that there's a sort of community gathering place. And my works, a lot of my projects really have sort of a stage set kind of feel to them in the installation. So I'm showing you this as an example of that kind of approach. In this particular case, this was a project, a temporary project at Art Park in upstate New York, Lewiston, New York, just downstream from Niagara Falls. So the overlook is the Niagara River, and across the river is Canada. So the sculpture is called Magnificent View, but it's made out of concrete and aluminum. And there's actually a light inside of this television set and a blue screen. So it sort of bathes the room in this blue TV light. Another similar installation, this is at Frula Park near Roosevelt High School in Seattle. And it's meant to reference the era of these houses, all these craftsman bungalows that are populating the neighborhood. So the furniture and the textures are very similar to the kinds of things that you find in those homes, with stone and concrete. The chairs also have a bronze trim along the top edge. Again, it's in a park, and it's a gathering place. It's meant to draw people in. And here's one other similar installation. This is just one part of a larger installation on a light rail platform at Park Rose Station outside of Portland. And so it consists of this sort of quasi living room and dining area. And these are two locations on the train platform, which provide seating, but they also are a sculpture. And they have a very stage set kind of appearance to them in my mind. And I love this glass work on the back, which I wish I could take credit for, but this was done by Christine Bourdette, who's a Portland artist you may be familiar with. But she did the glass work, and I just think it really complements the sculpture, and vice versa. And finally, one other piece. This is an installation on the WSU campus in Spokane. It's called Light Reading, and it consists of these two oversized granite armchairs and some bronze furniture. There's a little sort of boomerang table made out of bronze, and 2 bookcases, a vertical one and a horizontal one, made out of bronze and infilled with cast glass books that are backlit with LED lights. So they, like that Magnificent View project at Art Park, it sort of bathes the room in this blue light. And it's fascinating to see at night because you can see this thing from clear across the campus. You can't really see what it is, but you see this blue glow, and it just sucks you in and
I like that.
creates a gathering place for people on the campus. So those are just a few examples, and I'd ask you to keep those in mind when we're talking about my approach to this Lakewood project, because each one of those has some element that I think is apropos of this project. So, shall we, did you want to move into the questions that I was working on here, or?
Yeah.
Okay. So the first question was based on my site visit, what were my initial thoughts about this project? And I have a couple of different thoughts about it, a couple of different approaches that I might take, depending on a variety of factors. But one is my preference really is the thing I mentioned about this sort of stage set installation idea. The idea of creating a space that really attracts people into the plaza to interact with each other and to interact with the plaza and with the rest of the public. And it's an opportunity for people to actually create some street theater or some quasi stage performance. And it's partly inspired by previous work, but it's also triggered by the fact that site is centered by that old theater, which, as I understand it, may never be a theater again, but the work can play homage to that and make reference to the history of the site. And that's one of the things that I often try to do. If you think about the Crow with Fries, the reason it has French fries is because there used to be a drive-in restaurant on that site. So the sculpture itself has a sense of humor as a result of that, but it also makes a specific reference to something that used to happen on that site, that used to be located there. So that's the idea of creating a sort of stage where people could perform or just gather. And it might be similar to some of the things I've done before, but every one of these projects really has a different appearance. So it's also providing some sculptural seating. And I know that there are quite a few benches located around the site on the edges of the planters and things like that. But to provide some more seating is always a good thing. The second approach would be to follow on to the idea of a gateway, and the site being long and linear has sort of 2 main entrance and exit points. So it kind of makes sense that you could have a gateway element at each end that sort of announces that you're coming into this interesting site, and it should be something that says there's something going on here. You should pay attention to this. So that's another possible approach. And each one of these would have the opportunity to incorporate lighting as well. Let's see, let's go to the next one. What excites or interests you about this project? Well, as I mentioned, the idea of being able to create something that encourages people to interact with each other is really the key to my work. And it's true of all these projects that I've done over the last 35 years or so. Each one is different, and each one responds to its site, and it responds to the history and culture of that site. But it also is intended to really be interactive. These are not just static things that people look at. They have a purpose, and they are intended to really engage the audience, and that's my goal in all the work that I do. I think it's also important to note that one of the things I love about doing public art and why I got into this in the first place is because I'm really interested in presenting my work to a very broad audience, people of all backgrounds, including people who have absolutely no background or knowledge or education about art itself, which is true of the general public. Most people don't have much experience with art. Most people have never visited art museums or really paid a whole lot of attention to public art. So I'm always interested in connecting with those people, as well as people like you and my other artist friends and colleagues who are sophisticated and educated about art. So I think it's important to me to try to bridge that gap and to reach, all facets of that audience.
Agreed.
Did you have a question?
No, I just agree with you. I think that's a great, very
Okay.
perceptive with this particular community. I think that's great.
Well, thanks. It's important to me in every community that I work in, and I do spend a lot of time sort of trying to get to know the community somewhat. And again, every project is different, so the engagement is different in every case. But it's important to me to really try to understand what makes that particular community tick and what makes it special. Okay, potential challenges with this project. I think the biggest challenge, especially based on my site visit, is actually citing the work and locating it properly so that it has the biggest impact, so that it really does what it's intended to do, which is to attract people in, to make a statement, and to really become an iconic element in that site, as opposed to being, a standalone sculpture that's sort of stuck off in a corner somewhere. This is an opportunity for the artwork to actually be a very focal element and a key in the goal of trying to get people together and unite the community. So I think that's the biggest challenge, is citing the work. And we can talk a bit more about that too at some point towards the end here, maybe, because I want the work to have the optimal impact, but some of this property is privately owned, and some of it is roadway. So obviously we can't build a sculpture in the roadway. And one of the areas that was mentioned in our walkthrough was any of the planted areas, the barked areas, were potential sites. But in my mind, those aren't necessarily the best place to put artwork, because for one thing, you would have to sacrifice some planting to do that. But also those tend to be fairly small, small pocket sites. So does that lessen the impact of the artwork is something to consider. So, and obviously the work has to be in a location where it's protected from vehicle traffic, but is also visible to vehicle traffic too. It's not just for the pedestrians. It's a tricky site to work with. And I'll show you towards the end. I'll share my screen again and show you a little sort of site plan consideration that I've been playing with about how that might be done. But obviously there are some issues that need to be worked out if we choose to site the work on the plaza itself, for example. So, question about my plans to do additional research, and the answer is yes, I do plan to do additional research. I went back down to the site the day after we had the walk around, in hopes of going to the Historical Society. And I went on their website, and there's a note on there saying that it's closed due to the COVID pandemic. But then there's also a box right next to that lists their open hours and a phone number. So I called. I wasn't able to get through, but on the phone message, it listed open hours. So I thought, okay, I'll take a chance. I can't tell for sure if it's open or not. Well, it isn't. So that was disappointing, and they really should update their website and their phone message. It made it sound like it was open, but anyway, I'm sure there's a lot of really interesting stuff to see there. And I travel around quite a bit, and I really enjoy going to little historical museums in small towns and big cities, and they all have such a unique character, and it's interesting to me to just learn a little bit about the history. You know, that Colonial Plaza hasn't always been there, and it's interesting to look back and find out not only what was there in the past, but who the people were who lived nearby or who worked on that site or who settled that site, or the Native American people who were there even long before we all got there. So there's a lot of research to do. And the other thing that I like to do is I like to explore local eateries, diners, drive-ins and dives sort of thing. I enjoy just regional cuisine and culture, and just I enjoy seeing what's out there. And every once in a while you stumble upon something that's really, really pretty amazing. And I also like to get, you know, good restaurant recommendations from local people. So there is more to learn for sure.
Tons of good international food in Lakewood. So.
Well, it looks like it from doing a Google search. I'm looking forward to trying some of those.
Peter, I served on the Historical Society Board of Directors for a time, and I'd be happy to provide you some information on the origins of the plaza and some of the people that were responsible for it becoming what it is.
Oh, that would be great. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, let's see. Where did I leave off here? Oh, there's a question about thoughts for the community about this art and how can it engage the community and also draw tourists. And I think I've addressed that a little bit, but really my idea of creating a space that encourages gathering is kind of key to that question. The fact that there are so many events that occur in this location already means that it is already recognized as a site where people can come and engage together in different events. And I think that there's no end to the kinds of things you could do there. It's been mentioned there car shows and art fairs and food festivals and cultural festivals and ethnic festivals and all those kinds of things that could be done, and some of which already are being done there. That's the sort of thing that I find really interesting. And it's a really pretty good sized site. Once those, I can imagine that once those street ends are closed off and the driveways to the motel are closed off so that becomes a big open public space, I can imagine it is quite engaging and quite active. So my idea, again, there are two possible approaches I might take, which is the gateway idea, which identifies the two entry and exit points of the site, or this idea that I have that I keep coming back to of creating some sculptural installation that actually serves a purpose of being not just a sculptural seating element, but a quasi stage where people could really create their own activity. Now that could be, again, part of a festival, but I can imagine all sorts of things being done there. And several of my installations have been used in ways like that. I have an installation on the University of Washington campus that is adjacent to a student theater, and the theater students use it as a stage set, and they create dance performances and stage performances within the confines of this sculptural installation. So I think that's a really interesting possibility. I'm also really intrigued by the idea of this theater, and it's kind of a shame that it isn't still an active theater, but times change, and so you have to adapt. But clearly, it has the appearance of a historical building that should be preserved. And even if it isn't being used as a theater, the idea of creating artwork that harkens back to its history is something that I am intrigued by and likely to
Thank you so much. I'm just going to do a time check. We have
Okay,
minutes left. I'd really like to open it up to some organic questions based on your
sure,
presentation.
sure.
So does anyone have questions based on what you heard today?
Well, I think you've answered a lot of the questions, Peter, but I like your sort of commentary on the challenge of the siting, because I think I agree that when this place is used as a festival street, I think the challenge is avoiding the art from becoming lost in the site. When you start thinking about a lot of people and tents up and all that sort of stuff, something small can get really lost in the mix. And I would hope that we create something that's not only interactive, but a bit iconic and visible. So that I agree, it's a little bit of a challenge, but something to think about.
And you know, the second challenge, and I too appreciate that you brought that up, because I do think it's a challenging site in terms of siting the art. Is when you're doing an event, you kind of have to use every last bit of the space that is usable.
Of
Yeah.
course.
And so then if there's artwork there, you can't really just pick it up and move it to make room for the stage. And I'm sure you've worked with those challenges, but.
Yeah, that is a challenge. But again, that one of my idea of creating this sort of stage set in a way works to the advantage of that, because it also creates a space that can be used even during other events. It provides some seating. It provides a central sort of stage where people can do a performance or something like that. It might even become a rotating stage where there's music and dance and theater. It's designated as that spot for that activity.
Yeah, this is Susan. I love the multifaceted, multidisciplinary approach to your work, and also the narrative that you bring to each of your works, and how people can approach that and really create their own interpretation of what you are offering them. So I enjoyed that very much.
Well, thank
That
you.
was a comment.
Well, thank you. That tells me you get it. You understand what I'm trying to do, and I appreciate that.
Yeah.
Well, you seem to have that ability to distill down to the very heart of whatever it is, whatever that narrative is, and then put together this archetype of an image in that place.
I try.
Well, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank
very
you.
much. Any questions of us, Peter, that we can help?
No, I don't have any specific questions, but again, I am concerned about the siting of it, and that's something that clearly is going to require some conversation and some thought. And there may be things I've missed too. There may be some location that's not even on my radar at the moment, but
Right.
that's my biggest issue, I think, is to be concerned about. But I think every problem has a solution.
Yes.
Now, you with this budget, you mentioned 2 gateways. Have you done artwork at this price point before? And is it reasonable to do 2 gateways with that, with $90,000?
I have done several projects in this price range, and so yes, it is. Now, what I'm imagining is not necessarily 2 giant arches that cross over the street, but 2 distinct sculptural elements, one at each end. And I'm well aware of what it takes to work within a budget, and also I do all of my own fabrication and installation. So oftentimes I'm able to do more with a given budget than other artists can, because I'm not forced to go out and hire an outside fabricator. I'm able to do all of that myself.
Oh,
So
that's
it's
huge.
a big advantage to me, because I'm able to get more out of a given budget.
Do you work with the lighting too? I know several of your pieces, Peter, had lighting, or do you engage in a lighting contractor? Or?
No, I do that myself too, but I do have a couple of people that I can consult with that are experts in lighting design, and that's really helpful. And these days there are so many LED options available that it's just really incredible My lighting is, as you notice from looking at these pieces, is not really elaborate. It's usually a single element or a couple of
Yeah.
elements, and it's not changing colors or any of that kind of
Right.
stuff. It's not moving light. It's an accent and an embellishment to the
Mhm.
work. So it's fairly simple. And what I also try to do is to use off-the-shelf components, fixtures,
Mhm.
and
Mhm.
lighting bulbs and things like that, so that they're easy to maintain. In
I
some of
love
the
the
earlier
use-
projects, I actually have custom LEDs made,
Yeah,
and that's problematic when it comes to maintenance. If they're,
right.
you can't just go plug and play.
I like the use of the one in Spokane at the WSU campus where you had the mixed materials. You had obviously the granite chairs and the bronze work and the cast glass with the illumination. That was kind of a neat interplay of materials for sure.
Thanks. I love that piece too. And that's one though that has, because I had this wall of light behind the glass,
Yeah,
I had custom LED circuit boards made for that. So there's a grid of LEDs, and fortunately it's held up quite well, but I'm not doing it that way anymore for that simple reason.
right.
Thank
But
you so
lighting-
much, Peter. We've reached the end of our time unless someone has a really pressing question, or if you have a pressing question to ask.
I really appreciate the opportunity. Thank you for your interest in my work.
Thank
Oh,
you.
that's great.
Thank you for your organized presentation. It was
Yeah,
wonderful.
thanks.
Yeah,
Thanks.
thank you.
Talk to you
Thank you.
soon. Bye-bye.
And if
Bye.
everyone wants to stay on other than Peter.
Bye.
You love your dog.
This darn dog keeps pawing at my leg because he wants up.
I know, that's why I came to the office.
Yeah. Jeez.
Well, another two wonderful presentations. Do you want to debrief a little bit?
I want one from each of them. That's what I want, you know.
Yes, they're so good.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah,
They
really
are
good.
so good. You know, I hear one, I think they're the one, and then I hear the next one, I think they're the one.
I know. Yeah,
Just,
it's tough. I liked them both. I liked the first couple just because they do a lot of work with lighting, and I think they understand the need to attract attention into that space and have it be interactive. So some of the weird, interesting shapes of benches that had the lighting that changed, you know, that had some height to it were kind of interesting to me. I love that Nashville River thing. That is so iconic because of the bend in the river. It's so recognizable.
mhm.
And the lighting on it, that's pretty cool.
I know it makes me think of the audience. Like, so if you're a community member, are you going to want something that's beautiful like that you get to look at? Or are you going to want something that's more really down to earth, like those sets that Peter makes, you know, that you get to interact
Yeah,
with?
it's hard to say.
It's just so, yeah, it's very tricky.
I
Like, oh, go ahead, Susan.
I agree. I feel like both artists both provided something that you guys been looking for, like very interactive, and I guess maybe more like a lot more smaller. And then the couple, I feel like their work was more what's like attention seeking, like I feel like, yeah, just something not down to earth. I feel like it's basically the complete opposite. So yeah, I feel like they both provided what you guys have been looking for, just very simple and also interactive, but something that also like personally connects to the community. That's what I saw a lot in Peter's work, actually, that he was very he wanted something that connected to the site, was very, you know, historical. So I thought that was pretty cool.
What do you think would resonate more with you of the two?
For like a community based piece of art.
Yeah, just
Um,
the plaza.
Yeah, I would go with Peter then, just because like I said, I feel like his work is more community based, something that the community could connect with personally. And with the couple, it just reminds me of artwork that I'd seen more in like a bigger city, and something that's still very beautiful, but more extravagant and not necessarily personal. And like you said, you know, down to earth, that people could, you know, gather around and actually feel connected to it. So Peter, definitely.
I have to echo her comments completely. I mean, I liked how Peter was wanting to take approach of being more engaging with our community, and the history behind, the center, and wanting to incorporate that into the piece of art. Just like John from yesterday, where John, I really like I had said yesterday, where I really appreciated the fact where he did a little bit of research, about our community and about Lakewood. Um, and suggested maybe even tying in some of our sister city art. Um, so I liked the first couple, but I had also kind of thought that they were so dynamic for what we may be going for, and it kind of didn't really tie into much to the Colonial Center. But
Thank you.
Yeah, I like like I said earlier in my comment, I like the multidisciplinary nature of Peter's work, and that people can create their own stories and own skits around it. It adds another dimension, and I especially like that tie into the history of the site and the old theater there. It's very fun, and it's very democratic.
if he were able to, I liked his suggestion of where he was kind of suggesting something, at least to me, it seemed like, of doing some piece of an artwork in front of the theater that would mimic some sort of a stage. I kind of that really resonated well with me, because I thought that would be a very intriguing idea if there was some sort of artwork that could be perhaps used as a stage where the theater would be the backdrop, kind of giving ode to the theater and, homage to it, and while also serving as a public square as well.
Almost like you could
the
have a
fact
ticket
that
booth.
I was gonna say the fact that the Historical Society wasn't open, that was kind of a big deal, because that could have really triggered a lot of other, like the racetrack and everything. But let's make a point once we narrow it down to our top 2 to 3 to invite them and have a private showing there and open that up to them.
Yeah, that would be great. Mm-hmm.
And I wouldn't suggest any one-off conversations. Mary just advised me to be like fair
Mm-hmm.
in terms of working with each person.
Right.
We'll do a group gathering. Well, I liked what he had to say about, he seemed to have a strong pulse on our population in terms of that not everyone knows art is there, and this idea that once you bring something in that's really tangible and approachable, that it can start really influencing people, and then they like public art, and then they want more public. So it's a catalyst.
Mm-hmm.
Anything else, Jason or Daryl or anyone?
No, I think this is a great process. It's kind of fun to get with all these individuals. It's really amazing how many talented people there are out there.
Yeah.
Agreed.
Yeah, it's been very, very enjoyable.
Yes, it has. Well, remember to keep your notes, so when it comes time to vote, they don't all just run together, and you've got your little comments to discuss. And we'll see you all tomorrow at 5 o'clock. And Thursday's meeting will end at 6 o'clock sharp. So if we come to an agreement by 6, we'll carry it over into the Arts Commission meeting.
Sounds good. And then we have to think about a process for the winnowing down, right? Are we going to do stickers or?
On Thursday.
Yeah.
Well, I've been consulting with the city of Tacoma, and they just do it the same way. They have a dialogue. They just continue, just like we picked this, have a dialogue, and we'll decide if we want 2 or 3 or 1, 2 or 3 as finalists, and then, but no more than 3, and then they'll get paid to create some designs.
Fun.
Yeah.
After probably they get more feedback from us and they do some research. I think that would be helpful to hone things down.
Absolutely. So we'll talk about that timeline. Okay, thank you so much, everybody.
Thanks,
Have
guys.
a good night.
For your time.
Thank you.
Good night.